Okay, so here's the deal. I was going to go ahead and eat throughout this review because of the theme here, but I just couldn't help myself. After watching this movie, I became so hungry that I just came home immediately and got some food in my system. It was probably the only way that I would be able to muster up enough energy to give you guys this review. So, let's get started. Hello everyone, David here, bringing you guys a movie review. Haven't done these in quite a while because of the fact that there hasn't been enough movies that have caught my attention that made me go, oh, I genuinely want to see this. Up until now. And needless to say, the movie choice is a bit odd. And I'm talking about none other than Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs 2. And the reason for that being that I personally love the first one. I remember watching the first one back in, I think it was 2009 or 2010. It was one of those 2 years for sure. It couldn't have come out no later than 2011. But I remember watching that first movie and being a little skeptical, considering the fact that they're taking this children's book, those simple children books that only have like 10 pages and have almost no story except for these magical things that are happening, and stretching it out to a full-length feature film. I was very skeptical. But then I watched it and I thought to myself, man, this is actually one of the best animated movies that came out that year, and I enjoyed it. I loved it all the way through. So when they announced that they were going to make a sequel, I was on board. Now, I don't know about the writers, but these were different directors than from the first movie. They went on to do, 21 Jump Street, and now they're doing the Lego movie. But those original directors still oversaw the sequel. They were still, I can't remember, they were still producers. They still created the story as to what the premise of the second movie was going to be. And the story is that the leftover food from the end of the first movie have taken up every inch of space on the island that is home to our main character, Flint Lockwood, who is a young inventor who invented the machine that was able to turn food into water in the first movie. But now the food has reanimated and come to life, and now it's up to Flint, along with his friends, to stop it. Now, I'm telling you, first and foremost, this is a kids movie. Don't expect any sort of huge development with these characters aside from the basic tropes that every family, or mainly kids movie, because this isn't so much a family movie, because when it's a family movie, it usually has elements that not only cater to the kids, but also to the adults, as well as the jokes and the inside gags. This is actually more on the kids side, where the moral of the story is about friendship, the structure of that story, knowing when the shoe's gonna drop. It's all there. The story is as basic as it could ever get. The characters are practically the same as they were before, and there's not much change to them. They're still somewhat enjoyable to see on the screen, but nothing's really new with them. All of the voices, or at least most of the voices from the first one, are here, with the exception of Mr. T. Mr. T, who played the cop. Can't remember his name, but the cute, extra action-oriented cop who cracks me up. I will admit, cracks me up every time I see him. He did, however, make me laugh more in the first movie more so than here, because I feel like here he wasn't used very well. But in the first movie, he was voiced by Mr. T. Here, he is voiced by Terry Crews. So I think that's the only replacement that I can think of. Other than that, Bill Hader, Anna Faris, they've all come back, and they're all here voicing their respective characters. And they do their job. There's nothing exactly too fascinating about them, but at the same time, nothing exactly terrible. They're just doing the basic job of portraying these characters. The movie's so basic in its writing that they didn't even try to mask the villain. Any other movie would try to hide the villain and make you think that it wasn't really him, but then at the end of the movie it turns out that it was him. Here, they just straight out tell you, yeah, we're not fooling anybody. This is the bad guy. Here you go. Root against him. What I liked about the first movie that I feel separated it from other animated movies was the slapstick humor. There's an awful lot of slapstick in that first movie, where the animations are all zip, zap, zip, super fast, and that's also carried on over here in the second film. However, in the first movie, there were certain moments of pacing where they were able to not get too carried away with that, animation style where everything's just super quick, zoop-a-doo-dah. Here, however, there's not much of a break in between those slapstick comedy moments that I do feel that after about maybe 25-30 minutes of that type of humor, and don't get me wrong, in those first 25 to 30 minutes, I was cracking up. I had a smile on my face the entire time, because there were certain jokes that just worked really well in the first act of this movie. I was laughing quite an awful lot. But it's after that point, and once they get to the island, that two things happen. One, that slapstick humor kind of starts to overstay its welcome, and it starts to become invisible, and I honestly didn't think it was that funny anymore. Even though there were certain moments that, because of that humor, they were actual jokes later on in the movie that genuinely made me either chuckle or smile, and maybe one or two actually made me laugh. But the second thing that happened is that they started to get a little heavy-handed with some of the food puns because of the fact that all these foods have come to life and they resemble some sort of animal. They go ahead and mix the name of that animal with the name of the food that they are, and don't get me wrong, some of them are kind of charming, kind of funny, but then there are moments where I felt like the movie would literally just pause to say, "Hey, look, it's that." You know, there's that scene that you see in the trailer where he's like, "There's a leak on the boat," and then there's literally a leak in the boat. But that shot, that really quick clip, is literally during a grave situation that these characters are in the movie. So I'm like, did you guys really need to put that in there? That could have just easily had been cut, and the scene would have been a lot smoother, at least smoother than it was. But because they had to stop and say, "Food pun," it did take me out of the movie a little bit. However, regardless of how they handled those food puns, the animation in this movie is really, really good. I'm not gonna say, I'm not gonna go ahead and jump the gun and say it's Pixar level, but they are, Sony Animation is definitely stepping up their game, and I think the animation in this movie, with the exception of maybe one or two creatures that felt that looked a little basic, like there was almost no texture to them. Like for example, you see that there's a running gag with a tomato, and whenever you see the tomato, it looks kind of plasticky. So, but then again, tomatoes look like plastic in real life as it is, so that's kind of an empty complaint. But throughout the movie, at least until the third act, you keep seeing new, animal foods or food animals or foot animals, whatever you want to call them. They keep popping up, and every time you see a new one, you can't help but smile because the design for these creatures are just so charming. They're beautiful to look at, and they're quite funny. Every now and then there would be an animal that would genuinely make me laugh. My favorite would have to be the pickles because there was some sort of Little Big Planet quality to them. I don't know, the way there was one that was grumpy and then there's one that's kind of goofy looking, and I like the pickles. I really like the pickles. And as the movie goes along, you see how colorful this whole island has become with food, and the animation is very fluid that I couldn't help but feel as a little kid, not in terms of nostalgia factor, but more in how wondrous this place looked and how wondrous these creatures look. Because there's a scene early on in the movie where they go ahead and they replicate two particular scenes from Jurassic Park. And one of them is the infamous Welcome to Jurassic Park scene where they just zoom out and show you all these creatures as the music swells up. And let me tell you, I'm gonna be honest, the first movie as well as the second movie, because this actually manages to carry on over the same composer as well as the same motifs of music. The score, I really enjoy the score because when the score swells up during that Welcome to Jurassic Park like scene, and you see those brontosaurus looking creatures that look like radishes, I can't remember what they were called, and the hippos that were like potatoes, I can't remember their names. They're a fusion of names, that is. But whenever you see them and as the music was swelled up, I genuinely got goosebumps at the back of my back because I genuinely felt like a kid seeing that scene and how colorful it was. And a lot of thought was actually put into the design and the artwork of this movie. Overall, despite being pretty basic in not only its story and its characters, the fluid animation as well as the design of these food animals are beautiful, and they're very charming and they're very well designed. And it's enough to redeem this movie. And if I were to go ahead and draw a Venn diagram where you got something that falls right in the middle between the good and the bad, I would say that in that middle would be the humor. The first 30 to 35 minutes, I said 25, maybe 30 or 35, the humor is genuinely funny. At least it was to me. It might be a personal thing. But I felt like the slapstick comedy was genuinely humorous. But it wasn't until the 35-minute mark that I felt like that it was overstaying its welcome, and some of the food puns were starting to fall flat. So because of that, I give Clouded with a Chance of Meatballs 2 an 8.2 out of 10, which is a B-. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.